The note on the kitchen counter sliced through Andrew's world like a guillotine. I'm with Nathan now. Don't call. Caitlin's elegant cursive, once a symbol of love, now mocked him with betrayal. At 42, Andrew Wilson stood in his Portland home, a bottle of Pinot Noir trembling in his hand, as the life he'd built crumbled. He'd spent weeks planning this evening, dreaming of a quiet dinner to celebrate the night they met, 15 years ago at a jazz festival, where Caitlin's laugh had wrapped around him like a warm blanket. The wine, still sweating from the store, was meant to rekindle that spark. Now the house was eerily still, the only sound a faint creak from the staircase. Andrew's heart thudded as he set the bottle on the oak table, its condensation pooling like unspoken grief. "Caitlin?" he called, his voice swallowed by the silence. A flicker of light danced in the hallway as Caitlin descended, her navy suitcase rolling behind her like a verdict. At 40, she was poised, her auburn hair tied back tightly, her coat buttoned to the chin as if armoring herself against the life she was abandoning. Her eyes, sharp and unyielding, avoided his. "You're late," she said, her tone as cold as the February air outside. Andrew forced a smile, clinging to a shred of hope. "I got wine. Thought we could," he faltered. Her face was a mask impenetrable. "I'm staying with Nathan," she declared, as if reading a weather report. "I need space. A month, maybe less." Nathan, her ex, not a colleague, not a retreat, not even a hotel. The name landed like a fist, bruising years of compromises. Andrew's mind raced, replaying moments he'd ignored. Her late-night texts dismissed as work, weekends she spent with friends. His throat tightened, but he choked back the urge to plead. "Space," he echoed, testing the word's weight. Caitlin nodded, already halfway out the door, her hand gripping the suitcase handle like a lifeline. Then came the sharp slap of sneakers on the stairs. Emily, their 20-year-old daughter, sauntered down, her hoodie slung low, AirPods dangling like badges of apathy. Her smirk mirrored Caitlin's, laced with the smugness of youth. "Oh, you're here," she said, her voice dripping with mock surprise. "Mom told you, right?" She's just clearing her head. "Nathan's helping, obviously." She leaned against the banister, chewing gum, her eyes daring Andrew to crack. "You're not gonna, lose it, are you? You'll just sit here, pay the bills, maybe cry into your wine." Classic Andrew. The word Andrew stung. Not because it was his name, but because it was a weapon she'd sharpened over years. He'd raised her since she was 5, driven her to dance recitals, paid for her college, endured her eye rolls. Yet here she was, aligning with her mother, laughing at his pain. Caitlin didn't correct Emily, didn't flinch. She adjusted her scarf, her silence a louder betrayal than any words. Andrew's fingers tightened around the wine bottle, the glass cool against his palm. He could have smashed it, screamed, demanded answers, but a spark of clarity held him back. This wasn't just a moment, it was a revelation. He saw them clearly. Caitlin, who'd taken his loyalty for granted. Emily, who'd wielded his kindness like a punching bag. His jaw clenched, but his voice stayed steady. "Enjoy your month," he said, setting the bottle down with deliberate calm. He walked past them, their presence already fading like ghosts. In the kitchen, he sank into a chair, the lights off, the hum of the fridge his only company. The note lay on the counter, its words searing into his mind. But beneath the pain, something stirred, a quiet resolve. They thought he'd break, wait, forgive. They were wrong. Andrew's eyes narrowed in the dark. This wasn't his collapse. It was his awakening. The kitchen clock ticked past midnight, each second a hammer striking Andrew's resolve into steel. Caitlin's note, "I'm with Nathan now. Don't call," burned in his mind, a fuse lit for a reckoning he hadn't known he was capable of. At 42, Andrew Wilson sat in the dark of his Portland home, not broken, but awake. dangerously, gloriously awake. The hum of the refrigerator was his only companion as he leaned back in the creaky chair, the silence amplifying memories he'd buried under years of compromise. He saw Caitlin's dismissive sighs when he spoke of his dreams to start a consultancy, her eyes glazing over as if his ambitions were background noise. He recalled Emily's smirk when he paid her tuition, her thanks tossed over her shoulder like a crumpled receipt. The moments piled up, Caitlin's late-night texts she claimed were just work, Emily's whispers to friends about Andrew, the guy who pays for everything. He'd been their ATM, their doormat, their ghost. No more. His phone buzzed, a notification from the security app he'd installed last year after a neighbor's break-in. A motion alert from the garage camera. Curious, he opened the app expecting a stray cat. Instead, the grainy footage showed Caitlin, 2 weeks ago, slipping into the garage at 1 a.m., a phone pressed to her ear. Her voice was faint but clear. "Nathan, I'm done here. I'll be with you soon." Andrew's breath caught. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment escape. It was a plan. He saved the clip, his fingers steady, his mind racing with possibilities. He stood, the chair scraping the floor, and moved to the study. The room was his sanctuary, cluttered with tax files and old journals, a space Caitlin and Emily never entered. He pulled open a drawer, retrieving a manila folder labeled Important Docs. Inside was their marriage contract signed 15 years ago, its pages yellowed but intact. Andrew's eyes scanned the text, landing on Clause 12. In the event of voluntary departure to reside with a former romantic partner, the departing spouse forfeits claim to shared property. Caitlin had insisted on it, paranoid after her last breakup. The irony was sharp, delicious. He set the contract aside, a weapon waiting to be wielded. Next, he logged into their bank accounts. His name was on every one, primary holder, Caitlin and Emily listed as authorized users. He'd paid every bill, from the mortgage to Emily's $12 smoothies. The utilities, insurance, even their Netflix account all routed through him. Andrew's lips twitched, not quite a smile. They'd forgotten who held the keys to their kingdom. He changed the passwords one by one, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Two-factor authentication enabled. Alerts rerouted to a new email he created on the spot. Every click was a brick in the wall he was building. The house felt different now, its shadows sharper, its silence not oppressive but alive. Andrew opened a notepad and began listing. Credit cards, car title, Spotify, Wi-Fi. Emily would lose her mind over the Wi-Fi. He paused, picturing her tantrum, then wrote faster. The car Caitlin drove, a sleek SUV, was in his name, a detail she'd never questioned. He flagged the account for review, a mental note to call the dealership tomorrow. The insurance policies, too, Caitlin's name was secondary, removable with a single form. He wasn't angry, not anymore. This was surgery, precise and bloodless. At 3 a.m., he found it. A letter tucked in the back of the folder, Caitlin's handwriting, dated 3 months ago. "Nathan, I can't wait to start over. Andrew's too weak to fight." His chest tightened, but not with pain, with clarity. The letter was a gift, a confession she'd never meant him to see. He snapped a photo, uploaded it to an encrypted drive, and labeled it Exhibit A. The camera footage, the letter, the contract. They were his arsenal, proof that Caitlin had orchestrated her exit long before tonight. He leaned back, the chair groaning under his weight. The man who'd walked into this house with wine and hope was gone. In his place was someone new, someone who saw the chessboard and knew every move. Andrew's eyes drifted to the kitchen counter, where the note still lay. He picked it up, folded it carefully, and slipped it into his pocket. Not as a wound, but as a reminder. His phone rang, shattering the quiet. Carl Weaver, his old friend and lawyer, picking up despite the hour. "Andrew, what's the emergency?" Carl's voice was gruff, half asleep. Andrew didn't hesitate. "I need you to review some documents. Property affirmations, financial protections." Caitlin's gone, and she's not coming back. A pause, then Carl's low whistle. You sound different, man. What's the play? Andrew's gaze hardened. The play is I win. He hung up, the plan crystallizing. Caitlin and Emily thought they'd left a broken man behind. They'd miscalculated. Andrew wasn't just awake. He was a force, methodical, unstoppable. The house, once a cage of their contempt, was now his command center. He opened his laptop again, pulling up the security system's full archive. Somewhere in those files was more evidence, more leverage. He'd find it, and when he did, they'd learn what happens when you underestimate a man who's finally remembered his worth. The first lock clicked shut at dawn, a sound sharper than any alarm Andrew had ever set. Caitlin's betrayal wasn't just a wound, it was a blueprint, and he was building his counterstrike with surgical precision. At 42, Andrew Wilson stood in his Portland home, no longer the man who'd begged for scraps of respect, but a strategist reclaiming his life. The study, once a cluttered refuge, was now his war room. Papers fanned across the desk. The marriage contract, bank statements, the damning letter from Caitlin to Nathan, the security footage from the garage, Caitlin's whispered promise to her ex, played on a loop in his mind, each frame fuel for his resolve. He'd spent the night dissecting their finances, and the truth was stark. Every thread of their comfortable life ran through his name. Mortgage, utilities, Emily's tuition, all his. Caitlin and Emily had treated him like a bank, but banks can close accounts. He started with the credit cards. Caitlin's platinum Visa, used for her self-care splurges, was canceled with a single click. Emily's card, racking up charges for iced lattes and online boutiques, followed. Andrew's fingers moved methodically across the keyboard, disabling their access to the joint accounts. He rerouted alerts to a new email, locked with two-factor authentication. The Wi-Fi password changed next. Emily's inevitable meltdown would be a bonus. The car, a sleek SUV Caitlin loved to flaunt, was in his name. A quick call to the dealership flagged it for repossession review. He didn't smile, didn't gloat. This was business. The marriage contract was his ace. Clause 12, inked by Caitlin's own paranoia, stripped her of any claim to the house if she left for an ex. Andrew scanned the document, emailing a copy to Carl Weaver, his lawyer, with a note. File the property affirmation today. No delays. Carl replied within minutes. You're playing hardball. I'm on it. The house, bought before Caitlin entered his life, was his fortress, and he was fortifying the walls. He moved to the bedroom, Caitlin's side a shrine to her vanity. Her perfume bottles gleamed like trophies, her jewelry box open, the engagement ring she'd left behind glinting accusingly. Andrew didn't touch it. Instead, he grabbed a cardboard box and began packing. Designer scarves, overpriced serums, the silk robe she wore to feel luxurious. All went in, sealed with tape. Emily's room was next. Her AirPods, yoga mat, and a stack of journals filled with passive-aggressive poetry joined the pile. He labeled each box with a marker. Caitlin, bedroom. Emily, garage. By noon, 3 boxes sat by the door, ready for a storage unit across town. He texted the facility's address to himself, a final severance. A notification pinged. An attempted login to the Netflix account from Emily's phone. Access denied. Andrew's lips twitched, the closest he'd come to a smile. He pictured her confusion, her entitled rage, and felt nothing but focus. The insurance policies were next. Caitlin's name, listed as a secondary beneficiary, was removed with a form submitted online. Emily's car insurance, tied to his policy, was flagged for cancellation. Every step was legal, deliberate, a reclamation of power they'd assumed was theirs. At 2 p.m., Carl called. Property affirmations filed, he said, his voice tinged with respect. Clause 12 is airtight. Caitlin's got no leverage unless she wants to admit she planned this with Nathan. You got proof. Andrew glanced at the letter on his desk. the security clip saved on his drive. "I've got enough," he said. "Good," Carl replied. "You're not just winning, you're rewriting the game." Andrew hung up and opened the security app again. He dug deeper, finding another clip from a month ago. Caitlin in the driveway, laughing with Nathan on speakerphone. "Andrew's clueless," she said. "He'll keep paying for everything." The words stung, but they were also a gift. More evidence, more nails in her coffin. He saved the file, labeled it Exhibit B, and backed it up to a second drive. If Caitlin tried to fight, she'd face a paper trail she couldn't outrun. He stepped into the living room, the space where Caitlin's eucalyptus candles and Emily's ironic throw pillows once dominated. They were gone now, packed away, the room stripped to its bones. Felt lighter, cleaner, like a canvas waiting for his mark. Andrew's phone buzzed. A text from Emily. "Yo, why's my card not working?" He didn't reply. Another buzz. "This time, Caitlin, we need to talk when I'm back." He archived both, their words irrelevant. They'd learn soon enough. By evening, the house was transformed. The locks were new, digital, coded to his phone. The old keys, including Caitlin's with its chipped heart charm, clinked into the trash. Andrew stood at the kitchen window, the city lights flickering below. The note from Caitlin, still in his pocket, was no longer a wound but a trophy. He'd been their fool for too long, but fools can learn. And this one was done playing. Caitlin's heels clicked on the porch, a desperate rhythm against the unyielding silence of the locked door. Her betrayal had been a calculated move, but Andrew's response was a masterstroke, and now the queen was cornered. At 42, Andrew Wilson stood upstairs in his Portland home, watching through a curtain as his wife and stepdaughter unraveled, their entitlement crumbling against his fortress of resolve. The morning sun cast long shadows across the street as Caitlin, 40, pounded on the door, her composure fraying. Her auburn hair, usually impeccable, was loose, and her beige trench coat hung askew. "Andrew, open this damn door," she shouted, her voice cracking with a mix of fury and fear. Emily, 20, slouched on the porch steps, her hoodie pulled tight, thumbs jabbing at her phone. "This is so stupid," she muttered, trying to log into Spotify for the third time. Access denied. Her scowl deepened, the first crack in her armor of arrogance. Andrew didn't move. His phone buzzed with notifications. Caitlin's calls, Emily's texts demanding Wi-Fi access, but he let them pile up, unanswered. The new digital locks, installed yesterday, gleamed silently, their codes known only to him. The old keys, including Caitlin's with its heart-shaped tag, were buried in a landfill by now. He'd spent the past month dismantling their world. Credit cards canceled, accounts locked, their belongings boxed and shipped to a storage unit. The marriage contract's Clause 12, Caitlin's own creation, had sealed their fate, stripping her of any claim to the house she'd abandoned for Nathan. Downstairs, the security system pinged. Andrew opened the app, watching live as Caitlin rang the doorbell again, her knocks turning to slaps. "Andrew, this isn't funny," she yelled, glancing at the neighbor's windows, her poise eroding. Emily stood, yanking out an AirPod. "Mom, just call a locksmith or something. He's probably crying inside." Andrew's lips twitched, not with pain but with irony. They still thought he was the man who'd wait, who'd break. They were about to learn otherwise. He'd prepared for this moment. At 3 p.m., an email hit their inboxes. Subject line, "Closure." Caitlin, pacing the porch, opened it first, her fingers trembling. The video loaded, and Andrew's face filled the screen. Seated in the living room, now stripped of her candles and throw pillows. His voice was calm, deliberate. "Caitlin, Emily, if you're watching this, you've noticed the locks don't work. Good. That means my timing's perfect." Caitlin's jaw tightened. Emily leaned in, her gum-chewing paused. "You left, Caitlin," Andrew continued, "to find space with Nathan. Your choice made freely, no coercion. You packed your bags, left a note, and walked out on a marriage without a single attempt to fix it. He held up a printed timeline itemizing their accounts. Your cards are canceled. Utilities, subscriptions, insurance, all in my name, all severed. The car you drove, Caitlin, is being repossessed. Emily, your Spotify, your coffee runs. Gone. Emily's phone slipped from her hand, clattering on the porch. Andrew leaned forward, his eyes piercing through the screen. Clause 12 of our marriage contract, Caitlin, you wrote it. Leaving for an ex voids your claim to this house. I filed the affirmation. It's done. He held up a photo of her letter to Nathan. Andrew's too weak to fight. You misjudged me, he said, his voice steady. And Emily, you laughed, called me a bank. Banks close, and this one's shut for good. The video ended with an address flashing on screen. The storage unit where their belongings waited. Caitlin's face drained of color. She dialed Andrew again, voicemail. She pounded the door, her fists shaking. You can't do this. Emily, now standing, muttered. He made a freaking PowerPoint. But her bravado was gone, replaced by a dawning fear. Caitlin called the police, her voice shrill as she demanded justice. Andrew watched from above, the security feed capturing every moment. He'd anticipated this, his evidence, letter, footage, contract, ready for scrutiny. The cruiser arrived at 4:30 p.m., 2 officers stepping out, their faces neutral. Caitlin launched into her story. My husband locked us out of our home. The taller officer, scanning her, asked, You live here full-time? Caitlin hesitated. I was taking space at a friend's. An ex, Andrew called from the doorway, stepping out with a folder. Officers, here's the deed. My name, 2008, pre-marriage. And the contract, clause 12, signed by her. He handed over the papers, his tone calm. She left voluntarily, confirmed in writing. Their things are in storage, undamaged. The officers reviewed the documents, the shorter one whistling. This checks out, he said. Caitlin's eyes widened. You can't just. Ma'am, the taller officer cut in. He's within his rights. This isn't your home legally. Emily, silent now, stared at the ground, her hoodie a shield. The officers handed back the folder. File a civil claim if you want, but there's no eviction here, they said, turning to leave. Caitlin stood frozen, the weight of her choices crashing down. Andrew retreated inside, locking the door. The silence was clean, unburdened. He'd played his hand, and the board was his. Caitlin and Emily lingered outside, their voices fading as reality sank in. Andrew poured a glass of water, the note from Caitlin still in his pocket, a relic of a life he'd outgrown. The game wasn't over, but this round was his. The city skyline glowed beneath Andrew's balcony, each light a quiet cheer for the life he'd reclaimed. Caitlin's betrayal had been a storm, but Andrew had built a fortress from its wreckage. And now, at 42, he stood taller than ever. In his Portland loft, Andrew Wilson sipped coffee, the bitter warmth a reminder that he'd turned pain into power. The courthouse had been the final battlefield. 2 weeks ago, Caitlin, dressed in a gray suit that couldn't hide her desperation, had tried to fight back. Her lawyer, a slick man with a weak case, argued emotional coercion, claiming Andrew's lockout was vindictive. Andrew sat 3 rows back, calm as Carl Weaver, his attorney, slid a folder across the judge's bench. Inside were the marriage contract's clause 12, Caitlin's letter to Nathan, and security footage timestamps. She left voluntarily, Carl said, his voice steady. She planned it, lived with her ex, and now wants to claim a house she abandoned. The judge, a woman with sharp eyes, scanned the evidence. Petitioner has no grounds, she ruled, her gavel a full stop. Caitlin's face froze, her mask of control shattered. Andrew didn't linger for her reaction. He walked out, the courthouse's stale air giving way to the crisp Portland breeze. The house, now sold, was a memory, a mausoleum of compromises he'd buried. The proceeds funded his new loft, a sleek space with hardwood floors, steel accents, and a view that reminded him the world was his to shape. He'd hired a designer, a blunt 30-year-old who'd tossed out Andrew's old furniture, calling it divorce beige. The new decor, clean lines, bold grays, matched the man he'd become. Unapologetic, focused, free. His mornings were his own now. No Caitlin reading headlines to fuel her outrage. No Emily slamming drawers over a slow router. Andrew rose at 6 a.m., hit the gym he'd once paid for but never used, and felt his body respond, stronger with each lift. He cooked breakfast, eggs, no frills, in a kitchen with knives he'd chosen, not ones Caitlin deemed Instagram-worthy. The loft had no TV in the bedroom, just blackout curtains and a sound machine that drowned out the past. Silence wasn't a void anymore. It was oxygen. Caitlin and Emily faded into irrelevance. A text from Emily arrived days after the ruling. "Can you Venmo $50? My card's dead." Andrew archived it, unmoved. Caitlin tried next, "We should talk." "I'm sorry." Her words, once knives, were now dust. He left her on read, her apologies too late to matter. Carl had warned they might try a civil suit, but with no leverage, no contract, no proof, they'd crumbled. Social media told the rest. Emily's TikToks, once brash, were now vague rants about fake family. Caitlin's Instagram, silent for weeks, posted a single cryptic quote about starting over. Andrew didn't care. They were strangers now, their consequences their own. He wasn't alone, though. Last week, he'd met Tom, a coworker in his late 30s, over beers. Tom's wife was pulling away, her texts secretive, her excuses thin. "I don't know what to do," Tom admitted, his voice low. Andrew listened, then shared his story, not with anger, but with clarity. "Check your accounts," he advised. "Get your papers in order. Don't wait for the note." Tom nodded, a spark of resolve in his eyes. Andrew paid the tab, feeling something new, purpose. His pain had become a map for others to navigate their own storms. Today, at 9 a.m., Andrew stood on his balcony, the city humming below. His phone buzzed, a security alert from the old house, now owned by a young couple. Attempted login, Caitlin_W. She tried the old Wi-Fi code, a final grasp at control. Andrew dismissed the alert, the ghost of her presence irrelevant. He set his coffee down, the mug's weight grounding him. The note, once a wound, was gone, burned in a quiet moment last week. He didn't need it anymore. Andrew leaned against the railing, the wind brushing his face. He wasn't just free, he was whole. Caitlin and Emily had bet on his weakness, but they'd lost everything. The house, the money, their grip on him. He'd lost nothing that mattered. The skyline stretched before him, infinite, unburdened. He exhaled, the sound soft but certain. "You're locked out," he whispered to no one. "And I'm home."